started here. Good morning, everybody. If you're out in the hallway, go ahead and make your way in. If you're in the hallway, go ahead and make your way in and find a seat. We're going to hear from Angela Foster here. She's going to tell us about what Rapha International has been doing.
Good morning. People in the hall, come on in. Go drag people out of the parking lot. Tim, that's your job. No. Good morning. We had a great day yesterday. Yes. Not only was the weather awesome, I mean, it was just crazy fun to watch everybody walk for Rapha. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me. I could talk about that all day. But my husband, Glenn, is going to make sure we have our newest brochure out. And we have not gone through our core values and mission and vision and all those things. And then I want to give an update later on at each location. But we also haven't talked about the actual issue of trafficking much. I mean, we talk about our response to trafficking. But how many of you saw or heard about the movie The Sound of Freedom? Okay, so Rapha, we actually produced, you could probably find, I'm pretty sure you can find it online, a response to that movie, because that movie it brings a lot of awareness to trafficking, but it doesn't really deal with the issue of what happens after. And it really doesn't address the problem of trafficking. So I want to talk about a lot of that this morning, so I will be reading a little bit from our response, but I want us to go through the brochure together. So Glenn is going to make sure that every one of you have a brochure. And I'm going to go ahead and talk while you're getting them because you can look at it with me. Our vision for Rapha has never changed. Our mission statement has changed just a wee bit. One of our favorite phrases is that when we know better, we're going to do better, right? And so we are celebrating our 20th year, and so we have learned a lot in that 20 years. I think I've said this before, we did it really backwards in the beginning, but as we have grown and as we know better and know more about the trafficking situation, we have changed some of our mission for sure. Our vision has always been for all children to live in sustainable freedom within safe communities. Our mission, we exist to end the trafficking and sexual abuse of children, one child, one family, one community at a time. That has changed a little bit because when we had our prevention program, it was kind of out there by itself. We now realize how very important the prevention side of what we do helps us in the prevention of, I really want to say we'd love to get ourselves out of the aftercare side of what we do, but we will never be able to do that. But we realize, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, how very important safe communities are. So our core values. We are super passionate. I know you always know that I am super passionate, but our entire organization is very passionate about God's heart for the oppressed. It drives our pursuit for healing, hope, and freedom for every child that we serve. We're welcoming. You don't have to be a Christian to enter our facility. We love and serve the children in our care regardless of their culture, faith, ethnicity, or worldview. We are humble. We really try to be honest about our successes and failures. We'll talk about those in a minute. We do have failure. If we said we were 100% successful in everything that we do, you would know that's not true. So we do not ever claim to be 100% successful in what we're doing. We're servant-minded. We follow Christ's example of servant leadership by serving those in need and empowering others to do the same, which is what we do in this relationship with you. We are empowering you to do exactly the same thing, to serve others. Holistic. We are committed to the whole uniqueness of each person we serve and addressing the whole person, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. We're very strategic in what we do. We pursue excellence through research, education, planning, and we do remain flexible in response to changing circumstances. I think that's what that know better, do better does for us. Now let's flip over. I'm going to come back to where we serve Cambodia, Thailand, and Haiti. I want to give you an update and about what we're doing in the States as well. But let's flip over to the problem. That's on the third page. The problem. 50 million people still trapped in slavery today. 1 in 4 is a child. If you remember, Rapha does care for minor children, ages in our prevention, ages preschool to adulthood. But in our aftercare campuses, we are trying to serve girls ages 6 to 18. So 1 in 4 of that 50 million are children. 87% of trafficked children are sexually exploited. There are other, as you'll see up there, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and child abuse. Those happen, but even in labor trafficking, you're going to find that when you get that child into our care, you'll figure out that there was a sexual component to that as well. 12 million children is hard to imagine. So where you're fighting in your community, you would want them to be cared for and supported. At Rapha, we're committed to providing the highest quality service for survivors and vulnerable children. Okay, that's the best. We do the best we can. Then when we know better, we do better. So let's talk about, don't look at the next page because we're not going to talk about it yet. Sound of Freedom. So the Sound of Freedom, again, brought a lot of awareness to the issue of human trafficking. But there are 3 things that we want to make people aware of. We want you to have a deeper understanding of human trafficking because it's an important part of becoming an advocate, staying an advocate. The more you know, the better you can fight. So the first cause, the causes of human trafficking, very, very complex. Understanding the circumstances doesn't excuse a trafficker, but acknowledges that systemic and cultural issues also play a role in human trafficking. It's not just bad people doing bad things, which is what the movie made it look like. There were just bad people out there, they're doing bad things, and we need to rescue the kids. True, need to rescue children anytime you can, but it's not always just that. Research shows that the vulnerability to human trafficking is tied to gender inequality, socioeconomic status, power relationships within a family, disorganized communities, cultural norms, racism, political priorities, public policy and law, and the existence and effectiveness of law enforcement. So if our law enforcement doesn't know about the problem, doesn't know how to respond to the problem, that's a problem. So why does that matter? Understanding what causes human trafficking is essential to building successful programs to protect the children and to prevent abuse. If human trafficking is attributed solely to evil behavior or bad actors, it's difficult to build a case for prevention. So if it's only the bad guys doing bad things, we're not going to focus on helping communities protect. We're not going to be in the prevention business if all we're after is the bad guy, right? So prevention and intervention into trafficking requires us to provide critical services at the community level to address the underlying issues. Those services are not prioritized when people believe that human trafficking is solely a law enforcement issue. And it can only be addressed by men and guns. When advocates and organizations understand that strengthening families and communities has the profound impact on human trafficking, it creates real and sustainable change. So number 2, the emotional manipulation and grooming of trafficked children. The tactics used to recruit children into trafficking and exploitation are really, really diverse. It can happen that children are abducted by traffickers, as portrayed in the movie, but it's much more common for children to be groomed by their abusers financially coerced, or emotionally manipulated into exploitation. Research identifies 5 common steps in grooming children. Victim selection. So they don't even have to be very smart. If your kids are on social media, or if they talk at school about their mom and dad aren't doing this or whatever, or they've got a stepdad that they don't want to be around, they need money for a car. Victim selection is not very hard. You see vulnerability in a person, whether it's a child or not. I'm specifically going to talk about children, but when you see that a vulnerable child, it's not hard to pick them out. Gaining access and isolation. So once you pick that victim, how can you get them to trust you? Because a trafficker can look just like me, right? I could be the trafficker and say, wow, I see you're really struggling at home. Would you like to come to our house? We've got some great video games. We've got a place for you to stay whenever you're not welcome. You don't feel welcome in your own home. So once I've identified that victim, all I have to do is gain access and try to isolate them from anybody that would know that they're with me, right? Trust development. So once I've got them isolated, they're going to learn to trust me. They're going to think I'm the one that's going to provide everything they need. They don't see my evil side because I've not shown them my evil side. So all I've done is found the victim, then I've created isolation for them, and then I'm going to help them trust me. Every day it gets a little easier for them to trust me and not the people on the outside. That's my job. Desensitization to touch. So this child that now trusts me is going to allow me to start hugging them or to do things that maybe they wouldn't let anybody else do, probably not even their own family members. So we're going to desensitize them to touch. Then maintaining control. Whatever I do, it's all about controlling that child, this person now. So those are the 5 ways of emotional manipulation and the way to groom children. And it happens every day, everywhere, every country, yes, even here. So why does that matter? Why does our knowledge of that matter? If our only model for survivors of trafficking are children who are physically trapped and begging to be freed, we have a very, very incomplete vision of survivors. Tragically, many survivors of child sex trafficking are not aware. They were not aware that they were being exploited, and then they'd have deep emotional bonds with their abusers. When they're rescued, it's not uncommon for them to feel anger and distrust for the rescuer. Because you're not my trusted person, they were. Now you're telling me they're bad. I don't trust you either. At Rapha, one of our goals for each child we serve is to help her find joy, peace, and happiness. We know, however, that those do not come immediately or even quickly. So we're in it for the long game, right? So we have to undo everything that's been done to her to reverse that cycle, so that we become the trusted individual. And I want to share a story about a girl in Thailand. She was one of the most beautiful things to me is when I have been on campus to see a new girl come in. You can pick them out of the crowd. They're the ones they're going to be isolated. They're going to be sitting by themselves. Maybe a counselor or social workers tried to talk to them, but they're going to be sitting by themselves because they don't know at this point that they've been rescued. They just know they've been moved, and here's a bunch of other girls. What are they going to expect of me? So the most important role that the girls that are in our care is to show her how accepted and loved she's going to be. And this is what she said. You are safe here. I promise you that. This is one girl talking to another. I didn't believe it either, but I was. And I am. I can finally sleep at night. I see a future for myself that I never imagined was possible. You can have that too. You just have to choose to believe me just a little bit. These people here will prove the rest to you. So the biggest advocate we have are children that we have already cared for. They're going to bring in those girls that are new, and they're going to tell them that we can be trusted. So I love that. So we have to reverse what's happened to them. Does it take a long time? Absolutely. For some, when our youngest right now in Thailand is 3, it didn't take her very long to start trusting because she's 3. She doesn't know any better. We're going to let her have her childhood back as quickly as we can. Hopefully diminish the memories of anything that has happened to her. Okay, so number 3, into the world of trafficking. The position, appearance, and behavior of perpetrators. Perpetrators of child sexual abuse and trafficking are very diverse. Portrayals that characterize perpetrators are deviant, explicitly violent, or frighteningly contribute to an incomplete understanding of trafficking. In fact, the grooming process in abuse and trafficking, as we've already talked about, often requires perpetrators to appear trustworthy and above reproach. Do I look like a trafficker? I could. I mean, honestly, you really have to start paying attention to it's not just the guy with the gold chains and the white fedora. It is everyday people that are evil, that their only goal is to groom a child to trust them. The Polaris Project, a leading anti-trafficking and research organization in the United States, states that traffickers come from all genders, races, ethnicities, and walks of life. In sex trafficking situations, they may be intimate partners of spouses of the victims, family members, friends, or benefactors, business acquaintances, and or bosses. So anybody with power can manipulate a child. So why is it important that we know that? Understanding survivors, understanding the perpetrator is essential to effective response to human trafficking. The false belief that a perpetrator of human trafficking will be easily identified as a dangerous person can provide more protection for perpetrators who are hiding in plain sight. Neighbors, friends, teachers, even a spiritual leader. Perpetrators can often use their position as respected and trusted community members in order to access and exploit children. So, that's why when people say, how can we have 50 million people in trafficking? It's not just children that are duped either. I mean, we are very, by nature, especially Christians, by nature we're pretty trusting people. So outlining the problem is that we need to have a deeper understanding of human trafficking. So on our website, I believe you can find this whole article. If you want to dive deeper, there's a lot more to it. If you want to dive deeper into the actual trafficking mindset, only because you need to be aware and protect those around you. Okay, so moving on. So there's the problem. What is Rapha's solution? Well, we provide survivor care, which is residential facilities for children that have been brought to us. Now, one of the things that people say, well, do you go out and do that whole guns and, what's it called when you raid? You know, no, we do not we have never participated in that. We have participated in retrieval before, way, way, way early in our 20 years. That is not how that works anymore. We do rely, in every country, in Cambodia, Thailand, and Haiti, we rely on our law enforcement and what they have, social services, it's not called that, it's called the Ministry of Affairs in one country. There are different ways to describe their child protective services. That's the major way that we get our referrals. So, what we do, we provide, if you'll look on, I guess that's page 4. We provide residential and non-residential care for children who have already been impacted by trafficking and abuse. Survivor care programming is built on 4 keys to freedom. Safety. So the first thing we want them to do is feel safe. That story of the girl saying, you can trust these people, you are safe here. So part of that safety looks like she comes through the gates. We're going to get to know her a little bit. We're already going to provide a team a counselor for her, a social worker to go find and visit and work with her family because they probably haven't seen her in a while. So we've got a social worker doing that. We've got an education plan for her wherever she is in her educational journey. If she's really young, we'll get to start that journey for her. If she comes to us older, because we do work with girls up to age 18, and sometimes we get them at 16, 17, and 18, we want to make sure that this is your bed, these are your toiletries, this is your dining hall too. You're going to get 3 meals and a snack every day. It doesn't matter what happened to you before, doesn't happen to matter when you're in our care. You're going to be fed every single meal because traffickers will withhold food and sleep as a way to keep control. We're not going to do that. We want her to know that she's safe. So safety is our first key to freedom. Then healing. The healing side, I said we're going to assign her a counselor. Don't know what that looks like. It's different for every girl. Sometimes it will just be individual counseling. Sometimes it'll be group counseling. Sometimes it'll be outside counseling. Just very, very unique to each child, the way that we go about counseling. Now, our counselors are all trauma-informed, trained, and we use the Bible as our curriculum. So they're going to learn about Jesus just by the love that we have when they walk in the door, but they're also going to learn through our counseling. Let's see, education. Again, super, super important for a child. Why do we send our kids to school? Education is power. So when she knows that she's valued just because she's alive and that we're going to help her learn, if she's older and doesn't know how to read, if she's been in a trafficking situation for a long time, doesn't know how to read, write, or do math in her own language, we're going to provide that for her. We're going to give her an education, whatever that looks like. We do have teachers on staff that come to our facility. We have some girls that go to private school, and we do have some girls that go to public school because they have not been out of the education system for very long. In all of the countries in which we work, you have to pass a test for every grade. So you don't get to skip grades, even if you're super smart. So our job is to find out where she is in that educational process. Now, if she's older, I would say culturally, 14 and up, they can choose to do vocational training. And we're still going to make sure that they know how to read, write, and do math. But they can, instead of going to school, we have 52 different Christian organizations that we work with in Cambodia and Thailand alone that also provide vocational training. We used to have, y'all used to purchase a lot of the items that were made by girls in our Cambodian vocational sewing program. We have changed that program because, so they made the bag or the purse, and then we paid them for their service, and we bought the materials. We just paid them for their labor. And then we ship it across. We have it here. We sell it online. We bring it and then we start the process all over again. Shipping has become outrageous, for one. The last time we tried to get some of the products I'll tell you about that we make in Thailand, we brought it home in suitcases because it was too expensive to ship. It wouldn't have done us any good. So our Cambodian director decided that she thought, okay, let's think about this. We in Cambodia, from the time you're in preschool, if you're enrolled in a preschool, all the way up to some businesses, they require a school uniform. So why don't we try to get contracts with some schools and let our vocational training program become sewing school uniforms? So that's pleated pants and shorts for the boys. That's a very tailored shirt. For the girls, it's a pleated skirt or a long skirt, and then the little Peter Pan collar puff sleeve shirt. So if we teach them how to sew those, they can go back to their village if they don't want to continue with the contracts that we have got. We now have contracts with 3 schools. And remember, we're in the prevention business. So we have over 900 kids that we provide tuition for them to go to school. So and they get 2 uniforms a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. That's 1,800 uniforms that we are able to sew or get them to sew and make money. So what we're doing is not only providing a benefit for our prevention program, but the 3 other schools that we have contracts with, our girls could go home and continue to sew school uniforms. Now, if they get tired of sewing a school uniform, because I'm not a sewer, but I've been told if you can sew a pleated skirt with a zipper and buttons on a tailored shirt with little puff sleeves and all the things, if you can do that, you could sew just about anything. So if she decides she wants to go 3 hours away to her village, she doesn't have electricity, that's okay. Because we're going to provide, when she reintegrates out of our care, we're going to provide her with a treadle machine, sewing machine, and she can sew, hang out a shingle, and she becomes the seamstress for the village, right? So it's so much more sustainable for the girls in the program and the girls that choose to leave the program. Now, if they have reintegrated and they want to continue sewing with our school contracts, amen. That's awesome. We want them to do that, and we have a place for them to do that. We have a property that we owned. I'll talk about that in a minute too. We own that. The downstairs is our sewing center, and upstairs is our what we're calling transitional care, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, vocational training. Now, if they don't want to sew, that is not the only. We have vocational training. We've got a girl that went to art school because she is extremely talented. We have sent multiple girls now to university. We have 5 on staff right now that that grew up in our program, either prevention or in our survivor campus, that have come back and are now working for us. 46% of our community workers in our prevention program grew up in the program. So they are serving where they were served. So huge benefit to the vocational training of community care, right? Okay, so education and vocational training is social work. Social work, our social workers going out to meet with families, the social workers in our prevention program are always in the community. And they don't just serve the people, the villagers that we have in our prevention programming, right? They're going to serve the community, whomever it is. We had a grandfather come up. He was raising his grandchildren. He had 2 grandchildren, a daughter that was about 13, and she didn't come home from school. And he'd seen our social workers in the villages all the time. So he stops them and he says, "Hey, my granddaughter has not come home. Can you help me find her?" Of course. They went and helped him. They were minutes away from getting her into a taxi to take her who knows where. But he knew he could get help from a Rapha community worker. So prevention, again, being in the communities in our social work is vital to what we do. We continue to support our residential clients as they reintegrate into their families and their communities. So even when a child leaves our care, that's not the end. It's not like we're going to go, okay, go have a good life. We'll see you soon. We may never see them again. But if they want, we are there to care for them. I have a story about a girl that left. Her mom actually came to get her back out of our care and took her home because she could make more money trafficking. Mom was the trafficker. So she could make more money being abused than she could sewing or whatever vocational training program she actually wanted to go do social work and be a social worker with us. So her mom comes and gets her because we don't have rights to them. We have guardianship when they're in our care, but we don't have the right to keep them if their parents want them back. So mom comes to get her. So that, for us, that's the success failure thing I was going to talk about. That is what we would consider failure, right? When a girl goes back into that lifestyle, whether it was her choice or not. That is a failure to us. So year 1, we failed. Year 2, year 3, she never lost touch with her social worker. Year 4, they've communicated all along. Year 4, she says, I want to get out. I want out of this lifestyle. So we put her in a training program. She doesn't make it. She goes back. Too much pressure from mom. So year 4, we're still failing. Year 5, she comes back again. And you would think that the social worker would go, okay, girl, I know your story. We're not going to spend any effort on you. Nope, not what we said. Put her in a different training program. Guess where she is now? She's one of the community workers in our prevention program. So year 5, 6, and 7, success. So you can't ever say that if they go back to the lifestyle, they won't remember how valued they were by Christ and by the staff at Rapha, because we're always going to keep in touch if they want to keep in touch. Super, super important. So down a little bit lower, prevention. Rapha provides services in vulnerable communities that promote stability and access to resources which help prevent abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and the trauma of family separation. Rapha projects provide critical education for parents and youth aimed at strengthening families and reducing risk. When communities come together to prevent and combat the sexual exploitation of children, real change, sustainable change takes place. So let's think about our community here. If you knew there was a child that was being abused in your community, would you do nothing? I would hope that every one of you, if I said, raise your hand if you would work hard to figure out a way to help this child, that every hand would go up. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But our job is to make communities aware of the issue. That's the prevention side of what we do. If we can help communities find ways to make their own money so that they're not the vulnerable people that they have been in the past. If we can help communities become stronger together, then we're going to protect. They're going to recognize when someone is being groomed or trafficked. So that's our job in our prevention. Okay, so let's move back to page 2. So I said we're celebrating 20 years. We started in 2003. Have I told y'all the story of how we got started? It started with Joe Garman, another ministry that we still support. American Rehabilitation Ministry is a ministry started by a man named Joe Garman. Joe Garman, part of his ministry was working with pastors, and he loves Southeast Asia. If he could go back and live there, he would, but he can't. He's up in years now and doing well staying at home. But he started this ministry 50 years ago. So he started the American Rehabilitation. It was actually a prison ministry. So how to rehabilitate someone coming out of the prison system. So he started that ministry, and he worked with Southeast Asian, especially he started in Cambodia, working with pastors there. He, while working with these pastors, was actually a part of the purchase of a girl. He was speaking through a translator, and they were talking about rehabilitation, and there was a ruckus in the back, and he asked his translator, should we stop? I need to know what's going on. He goes, no, it's fine. Just keep going. And so he keeps going, and the ruckus gets louder. So there was a trafficker that brought a young girl to the doors because all he saw in the room were a bunch of men. So he was trying to sell this girl to make money. So the ruckus gets louder, so Papa Joe says, hey, let's go find out what's going on. So they go over, and through the translator, he realizes, oh my word, they're trying to sell this girl. And he pulls out his wallet, and he has $300. And they were asking for $200. So never, ever, ever should you do this, but he paid the $200. And so then he looks at the pastors and is like, okay, what do we do with her now? And they're like, okay, we see this all the time. And one of the pastors said, she can come home and be part of my family until we can find her family. His heart was broken. If you have ever spent any time with Joe Garman, he is the most gentle, loving man. So he has 2 daughters at home that have children. He comes back to the United States, and he talks to his daughters. He's like, we have to do something. These pastors tell me that this happens all the time. We have to do something. Well, Stephanie Garman Freed is our CEO, and she said, Dad, She had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old daughter. And he said, you would not want that to happen to them. And she said, Dad, what can we do? So she said, Dad, I will do some research. I promise I'll do some research into trafficking. And back in 2003, there was not a lot of information about trafficking online. But she agreed, she did some research, and she was heartbroken. So she decides the next year to go with her dad to what she called a research trip. We're just going to go see what's up. She actually participated in a slave retrieval. She was told, one of the pastors said, I know this family that owns a junkyard, and I know their youngest daughter is being abused. I just know it. Through the villagers, he has found out that this little girl is being abused by the family at night. She works in the junkyard during the day and was abused at night. So, again, if you know Stephanie, she's a little bit shorter than me. She is more passionate than I am, if you can imagine that, and she was ready. She was going to get this kid. She was not leaving that junkyard without this kid. So she gets there, and she said it was the most frightening thing she's ever experienced. There was yelling, there was fighting, there was a lot going on, and this girl looked at her, and the translator said, please don't leave me here. Please don't leave me. Please help me. So Stephanie, again, knew she was not leaving without this little girl. So 3 hours this goes on. She pays $300. And she walks away with this young girl. And she said, as she was walking, she looked back at that junkyard and she said, that's the evil that Jesus saved me from. I'm going to fight for these kids, because she had now been told how many children were trafficked in this one little community. So that's how it started. She started backwards, and she will admit that today. She went out and said, hey, her poor husband jumped off the cliff with her. He owned his own business. They went to community churches, Christian churches that Joe Garman got them invitations to. Bruce, that's how he heard about Rapha, because you supported and he knew Joe Garman. And so that's how Rapha began. We started under the umbrella of ARM. They carried us for 2 or 3 years. Then we became our own 501c3. So as we have grown, again, as we've learned, we've done, she didn't have a board. She didn't have a way to house these girls. She just knew families. She created a community that would go and help these girls until she could find a rented facility. Built our first facility in Cambodia. At that time, I believe that was in 2006. It was residential care for most were dormitory style. So that's what we have in our flagship Survivor campus is a dormitory. So we've got all the activities downstairs that now we have them separated, but at that time, child interviewing, everything that happened with the government happened on the lower floors, and then the girls lived in the upper floors. That's still true. They live in the upper floors, but we have a separate building now that we do child-friendly investigating, because when you're when you have to give a deposition, it's super frightening to a child, so we want to make that as friendly as possible. We'll have a counselor with her, a social worker with her. One of the things that's super important, I may have skipped over that. Social work. Part of our job is to fight for every girl. We have an attorney assigned to every case. We're not going to win them all because people get paid under the table, the trafficker leaves the country. There are times that we're not going to win. But we know, and she knows, that we're going to fight super, super hard to keep her trafficker from doing this to anybody else. So another layer of value that we place on her is that, yes, we know this has happened to you, and we are so sorry, and we want to put the person that did this to you in prison. So we're going to fight for you. So those depositions and those interviews and even going to trial is very, very disturbing and traumatic for them, for sure. And so we try to make that as safe as possible. So on this campus, we have a totally separate building for that. In every campus we have now, we have a totally separate building where all of that happens. But in this dormitory style, we have a dining hall. We now have a soccer field. I mean, it's just grown. We've purchased land as we kept going. Now we don't even look at a property to build a facility if it doesn't have at least 3 to 5 acres, because now we do cottage style. I guess I should have brought pictures. But I think you can get online and see some as well. We have a cottage that will have a house mother with 8 to 10 girls. And so it's really a family situation. They all do dining together, but they all have their own place to do washing outside their cottage. They have chores. We don't want to treat them, yes, we want to treat them like princesses, but not really. We don't have air conditioning. We want to create an environment that's safe and that they feel protected. We've got walls, we've got razor wire, because it's not to keep them in, it's to keep the perpetrators out. Because if you're taking someone's income away from them, they're gonna probably continue looking for her. So we have 24/7 security, armed guards all the time. The girls learn really soon, very, very quickly, that they're trauma informed as well, and they're there to protect them, not to hurt them. So when they, so we've got girls in cottages. They have chores. We're teaching them basic life skills. That's part of our job too, is when you leave our care, we want you to be able to either live on your own if you're old enough, live on your own, or you can go back to your family and be a true participant in the family and helping that family run. So we have, in these 20 years, realized also that we have a need. We have two organizations that provide kind of like a step-down care. We call them halfway houses here when you're coming out of prison, but ours are not coming out of prison. They're coming out of healing. But it's not safe for them to go home, or they don't want to be a part of that family anymore. So we don't have a foster family or any other relative for them to go. We have transitional homes now in every location. Haiti, I'll discuss that really quickly because I'm almost out of time. In Haiti, we don't have anything going on right now because of the violence. I don't know how many of you have kept up with what's going on in Haiti. It's horrible. We can't even send our director back to Haiti. We pulled them out when COVID happened, and then the violence and the political unrest is so unbelievable. My husband and I say all the time, we don't even know how to pray for Haiti. That's one of those groans that you make to the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, take over in Haiti, because somebody's got to do something, because I don't know how people are living with the fuel costs, with the gangs right around the corner. It's just, we are functioning. Our staff is still there. We do outsourced care. So like we're helping women and children that have been abandoned or that have run away from a gang. We are helping them find care and housing. But we are not housing anyone in our property at the moment, because the violence got so very close to our facility that we had to reintegrate and rescue. We ended up in a hotel with several of our girls for weeks because it was not safe where we were. So our new facility is way up the mountain, but we have not had an opportunity to reestablish the care that we're doing there. But we're going to do it. The Lord is going to provide something for Haiti that is going to make that country functional again. I don't know what it is, but so Thailand, we have a new, in Thailand, the law is that you can't have the girls that have closed cases need to be separated from girls that have open cases. So we now have a new facility. We bought property right behind our facility. They actually share a gate. We have new staff that are over there. Quick update because I'm out of time. So we're going to pray. I didn't even have to have that little shepherd hook that got me off the stage. But anyway, so if you want more updates, Glenn and I will both be out at the table after class. But let's pray. God, we are so incredibly thankful for the work that you have for us to do, not only with Rapha here, that in Cambodia, Thailand, and Haiti didn't even get to talk about what we're doing in the United States, but God, you know the work that we have here is so very important, and I'm so incredibly thankful for Plainfield Christian Church coming alongside, and for 9 years of our 20, they have been a part of what we're doing, and so we're incredibly thankful. I just hope that we can all be aware of what trafficking looks like and be a solution for children all over the world, especially in this area in Plainfield. So thank you so much for loving us, for giving us the opportunity to partner together. In Jesus' name, amen.